All right, welcome in. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. CJ was just at the press conference held by Steve Sarkisian, his weekly pregame and postgame press conference on every Monday. Had a lot to say about a variety of different things about Quinn Ewers and his health currently, the construction of this defense and what he was looking at when the Longhorns went into the SEC. Also talked about, CJ, you asked a great question about whether or not these deep shots from Arch were premeditated as part of the game plan, or something that Arch just saw and went for, and then also about the mindset of this team and where he's at. But before we get there, let's go directly to Steve Sarkisian. This is him just moments ago.
Played really good complementary football Saturday. There was a moment in there when Anthony Hill gets the interception. We get the block in the back, but we convert that into a touchdown. Like, that's what you want to have. It's one thing to get turnovers. It's another, are you getting points off those turnovers? We get forced to punt. We pin them down inside the 5. We get a safety by Leonga Lafau. We force them to have to kick off from the 20. We get really good field position. We go score a touchdown. Like, that's us playing really good complementary football together. I thought that was exciting. I think the other thing that was exciting was, you know, we give out players of the game awards on offense, defense, and special teams. And the fact that our 2 defensive players of the game play the same position in Anthony Hill and Leonga Lafau. And I think that speaks volumes to a couple things. One, the depth on our football team right now. But 2, the fact that guys they're not counting their reps, they're making their reps count. And I think that we've got a team full of guys that are selfless, that pull for one another, that understand the value of having the depth that we have. So I think that was a pretty cool thing to recognize on that front. Obviously, it was great to have Jaden Blue back. He played a very good football game and impacted us. I thought Arch, from an offensive perspective, you know, when we go back and look at it, it was kind of what I thought. There's probably 4 or 5 plays in there where, you know, when he's really grasps checking that ball down, the value in that check down, and maybe not having to force a couple of those throws, the impact that could have had, you know, that's a difference of completing, you know, 52% of your passes to 65% of your passes, and then what that all looks like. So, you know, room for growth there. But again, I've been proud of our team. We've been playing really well in all 3 phases. But again, we keep pushing them for improvement. And I'd say that the greatest thing I heard this morning was, when the players got out of their position meetings of watching the tape, Jaden Blue walked right up to me and said, "Man, I should have played a lot better than I did." And here's a guy who had 4 touchdowns and 100-something yards. So I think the mentality of our team is trying to improve, trying to get better, and they did that today. So we've got our SEC opener with Mississippi State and Coach Levy. Ton of respect for Coach Levy. He knows, you know, Texas football well from his time in the Big 12. Very, very you know, offensive, innovative guy. They've got really good wideouts. To where they're a dangerous team that way. You know, I think back to our first year, you know, it's where they're fighting, scratching, and clawing, and, you know, they're dangerous that way, and I think that our players respect the heck out of them because of that. But this week is really about us, you know, and the fact that this is our SEC opener at home. Should be a great environment, a 3:15 kick. We're looking forward to our fans, you know, showing up early, staying late like they do, and then our guys going out and playing the brand and style of football that we've grown accustomed to. So we'll see everybody then on Saturday.
Good stuff there from Steve Sarkisian. CJ, got to ask you a couple questions here, buddy. First of all, he also then subsequently talked about Quinn Ewers and Quinn's health. What is the very latest on the young right-hander from Southlake?
Yeah, number 3 was back on the practice field today, Bobby. So a positive sign, and what could be a return to the field, obviously following that abdomen injury suffered against UTSA just about a week and a half ago. Sarkeesian did say, you know, we will see the injury report, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, later this week, mandated by the SEC, of course. Right now, Ewers would be listed as questionable, and this upcoming Tuesday and Wednesday practice will give you a good idea if Ewers will be healthy enough to go on Saturday for the SEC opener. Right now, it's all about the pain tolerance. It's all about, does he take those progressions from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday in terms of seeing him back on the field. Of course, Texas will have a bye after Mississippi State, and then you will go right back up to Dallas for the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma, where, of course, yeah, anything can happen in that game, Bobby, and I'm sure you'd like to have a surefire number 1 quarterback healthy and ready to go for that game.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation right now. You've got Arch Manning there in case Quinn does not feel 100%. But returning against OU is not new to Quinn Ewers. He did it 2 years ago, led the Longhorns to a 49-0 win over the Sooners in Dallas. So there's some precedent here, and it makes you wonder whether or not you think Sark is leaning one way or the other. Did you get a sense from being there in person what Sark was really thinking or feeling as it relates to whether or not he might be ready to go with Quinn Ewers this weekend and then give him another 2 weeks to heal up, or will he sit Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. I did get the idea, Bobby, that you would like to have Quinn Ewers back on the football field this week. Of course, it is an important game. You know, it is the beginning of SEC play. It's Texas's first game in the SEC. You'd like to start off, you know, with some confidence going into the rest of conference play. So I lean towards, if healthy, you will see Ewers back on the field. However, Texas does have the luxury, again, of coming in as a heavy favorite with a very talented quarterback number 2. And we saw what happened and what we would consider probably a B minus, a B game for Texas, and you end up winning by 48. There is a lot of confidence across the board. But right now, I do believe that if Ewers is healthy, you will see him on the field for at least a half, a quarter at the minimum, just to get him back into that rhythm, get him into those live situations. Because, yes, Ewers has done this before where he missed time, came back against Oklahoma. I would argue that Oklahoma defense versus the Oklahoma defense that you're seeing this season is quite a bit different. And for that reason, I think you'd like to find some rhythm once again for him to come back and play up to the standard that we've seen so far from him in 2024.
Especially since they got an off week next week, right? I mean, there's literally – it's going to be hard to simulate game situations for Quinn to get back up to speed. And we've seen it. Oklahoma does have an opportunistic defense. They did it to Quinn last year really quickly, got a couple turnovers early before he got underway and really got up to speed with what they were trying to do to him. I'm 50-50 on this. I could see it going either way, and I could see Sark's take on it either way, to be honest with you. All right, outside of that news, CJ, you asked a question that I think Rod Babers wanted to know, Jerry, myself, we all wanted to know. You asked Sark whether or not these deep shots that that Arch took on Saturday were premeditated or part of the scheme of the offense. I think Sark's answer was, revealed some insight into that.
Yeah, certainly. And, he said it was a two-way go, right? It was part of him and A.J. Milwig going over the game plan on Friday night. And he said he actually looked back and laughed at Coach Milwig and saying, we have a lot of deep passes on this play calling sheet. It's going to be an explosive game. And, well, we saw some fireworks, but we also saw a lot of attempts from Arch Manning vertically down the field. Of course, I believe there were 10 passes, Bobby, over 20 yards. That's the most that Quinn Ewers has ever attempted in his career. That would have been a career high for him at Texas. It was the second highest average distance of target by a Texas starting quarterback under Steve Sarkisian in the Texas era as well, going back to Hudson Card against Arkansas. So it was a prevalent theme throughout the entire night was the deep shots. And Sarkeesian said, yeah, that's twofold, right? The game plan prepared us for a deep passing attack, but also I think it's Arch Manning and that early, inexperience of, yeah, this is the play call. This is what's happening. Let's go find the guy running down the field and make a big play. You heard it in the opening statement there as well. Maybe there should have been 3, 4, 5 check down opportunities to just boost the completion percentage. Get the guys the ball in space early and let them work afterward. Sarkeesian did also mention, at some point you will go back and watch the film with Manning and point to, hey, this guy's not open. Find the check down. This guy, he is open, but you got to put the ball on him, or this guy's open. You got to get it to him quicker, right? It's all about the learning experience. And long term, this is great for Arch to be able to have these live experiences and learn from them on the fly, and still not necessarily have a consequential game in which these decisions are backfiring against the team. So all in all, a lot of different factors going in, but towards the end of the day, I think you'd see maybe a shorter approach next time Arch is a starting quarterback.
I got to say this. He actually said that you look at the stats from Arch Manning, 52% completion rate. That's not great. He said, but if we teach Arch to check it down a little bit more, be a little bit smarter with the ball, all of a sudden that goes to 65%. And he's doing really well as still competing those long balls. So Sarka, look, it's a marathon, not a sprint with Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian's eyes. And I think that's exactly where he's coming from. The other thing that I want to definitely hit on is something that Sark mentioned in his opening statement, and that was the mindset of the team. He talked about Jaden Blue at length a little bit, and how Blue, after his 4-touchdown performance on Saturday, just came up to Coach Sark after practice or after the film room this morning and said, "Hey, Coach, I actually could have had a lot better game." He said that identity of trying to improve even on a situation, even after a situation where you're really good, is something that a lot of the team is taking on right now as they strive to get better week to week.
Yeah, it's been a recurring theme so far, right? You know, we've seen Texas win and win big early this season, and yet each week on Monday they've come ready to prepare for the week at hand, leading up to the next Saturday game, and that's been no difference, right? You mentioned Jaden Blue and what he mentioned coming out of the running back position. You scored 4 touchdowns. You're the player of the game, 125 yards total. Still wanting to get better. And defensively, I know you allow 3 points. I think in that defensive room, there are folks there that believe that game should have been a shutout. And that was echoed throughout, some of the conversations that I heard behind the scenes after the game on Saturday as well. So there is room for improvement. And one thing that Sarkeesian did point out that he is very happy about is you look at the 2 defensive players of the week. That's Leon Glafau, that's Anthony Hill, both at the linebacker position for the Texas Longhorns. And not only is that great in terms of the depth that they have at linebacker, but it shows you what these guys are how these guys are pushing each other when they're on the field, right? It's no longer counting snaps, it's making your snaps count. And he's mentioned that several times this year. So to see that and hear that from several different position groups is great to say that complacency isn't going to be an option right now for Texas. And Sarkeesian also mentioned, hey, our coaching staff is going to coach hard because, this number 1 ranking is great in week 4. It doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. And, of course, the SEC championship game and national title are still the bigger picture for the Longhorns this year.
I laugh a little bit when he said that Anthony Hill and Leon Glafau were the 2 co-defensive players of the game, and they play the same position. They couldn't be on the field at the same time, yet they share that. I also laugh because myself and Tony Hills in postgame, we took Barron Sorrell as the defensive player of the game, and Rod Babers like, I can't decide between Leon Glafau and Anthony Hill. So kudos to Rod Babers on that.
It's a good issue to have.
Yeah, it's a really good issue to have. Talk a little bit more to CJ, if you don't mind, about the importance of prepping for each SEC game. Sark talked about when he was told when they were going to go into the SEC and some things that he went into that. But then he digressed a little bit and talked some about how they want to get after it each game and prepare for each game in the SEC because of just how talented the other teams are and how much it's a long slog of a season, very difficult and physical conference that they're going to be in this year.
Sarkeesian made this a pretty lengthy point, right? You going to the SEC and not only do you see the big uglies up front on both sides of the ball, but you got speed on the perimeter at both sides that you probably wouldn't have seen in other conferences. And the combination is what makes the SEC football, so special, from top to bottom of the conference. Sarkeesian mentioned a couple things that were interesting to me. One, you start SEC play with the way that the conference is set up. There is no divisions. That tiebreaker. Sarkeesian said he read about 2 pages of it and threw it away because of how lengthy and intricate it was. He doesn't want to deal with having a tiebreaker situation. So while Texas is what, a 38-point favorite for Mississippi State, there's going to be an emphasis that this is a championship level game for Texas week in and week out in the SEC to ensure that the utmost respect and due diligence in a game plan is given for this Longhorn team. Of course, going to play at Mississippi State. I know that they lost a quarterback. They'll be on quarterback number 2 to start their SEC slate as well. That's not going to change the amount of preparation for the Longhorns here because one loss, anywhere that you stumble in this SEC slate, it could derail an entire, plan in place right now to make it to Atlanta for the SEC championship game, Bobby. And that's not going to be something that Texas is, sitting back and not turning over leaves and preparation and game film and game plan scheme, whatever it might be. Texas taking every opponent as if this is their ticket to Atlanta. And right now it starts with Mississippi State.
Oh, yeah, it starts with Mississippi State, but he even mentioned Vanderbilt taking Missouri to overtime, to double overtime.
Oh, yeah.
This weekend. He's well aware of the dangers of taking a team too lightly. And I think he's getting that point across to the team right now. The other thing that I thought and wanted to get your thoughts on it, he talked about the construction of this defense and where it's come from where it was. Based on the fact that when he found out they were going to enter into the SEC and exactly what they needed, he described exactly what he's looking for at each position, essentially. And he also talked a little bit about how he came about the situation of getting Jalen Gilbo and Jahdae Barron on the field at the same time. Talk a little bit about those two aspects, if you don't mind, CJ.
Yeah, certainly. You saw the success Texas had last year when they were able to stop the run, when they were able to get, interior pressure in both the pass and the run game. It's been there at times this year. Of course, Texas has been great in the run stopping game, and they've been even better, I would say, in, the pass defense. So to have guys up front that can eat away blocks and create pressure on the quarterback, Sarkeesian said when he found out that Texas was going into the SEC, it was obviously a priority number one to get offensive linemen, but beyond that, you got to go get the guys that can get after the passer and make things difficult for opposing offenses up front. So to see what Texas has been able to do now with the 3 transfers and with Alex January step in, and it's been very positive in that regard. But you have to have linebackers behind them that can run side to side, Bobby. And right now with the 2 guys that he mentioned being named player of the week on the defensive side of the ball, Texas has those guys. You added David Benda, you added Mo Blackwell, guys that can range from sideline to sideline. Very important right now with the way that, the SEC is kind of moving towards some of those spread offenses, right? We've talked about it, how the Big 12 is kind of moving towards a defensive kind of approach when it comes to these innovative coaches coming in and with the 3 high safety looks and bare fronts thrown in with dime packages. Sarkeesian and his defensive staff have taken bits and pieces from each team that they played in the Big 12. You're starting to see the SEC kind of open it up more. Tennessee, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, LSU, Ole Miss. All of these teams are, I even forgot Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, but their passing offenses make things difficult. And right now, Texas having to find their 5 best defensive backs somewhere to get onto the field was a big point of emphasis in the spring, in which Jalen Gilbo was really starting to come along and be a big impactful player. Sarkeesian said, if we were to keep Jahdae Barron and Jalen Gilbo both at the star position, well, one of them would be standing next to me, and that wouldn't be how we would get our 5 best defensive backs on the field at a time. So the versatility for Jahdae Barron, who can play safety, can play nickel, can play cornerback, allows Texas to get one of their more impactful players on the field in a meaningful way. And we're seeing the benefits of it in person right now, Bobby. I believe Texas is top 10 in passing defense and total defense. And I don't think that would be the case if you didn't have a place for both Jalen Gilbo and Jahdae Barron on the field at the same time.
Also, number 1 overall in scoring defense right now.
How about that?
4 games allowing just 22 points. This is a really, really talented Texas defense that is playing well together. That's something that Brian Robeson mentioned on Coffee and Football this morning that I completely agree with, trying to do that. Hey, before I let you go, CJ, I have one more question. I want to say thank you also to our sponsor. That is Autograph. This segment, breaking news segment, brought to you by our friends at Autograph, the app that curates the best content, tickets, and gear to help you fan to your full potential. Being a fan is a full-time job, so Autograph does the heavy lifting for you. From tickets for big matchups to breaking news, the Autograph app has curated content for all things Texas, all the podcasts, articles, and game predictions you could ever want. The new replay feature lets you get the day's news without the noise for when you need it quickly. Use code ONTEXAS to download for free on Google Play or the Apple App Store today. That's, again, Autograph, the app referral code on Texas. CJ, any final closing thoughts from you on this? We mentioned the Quinn Ewers situation, him still being practicing, but Sark being non-committal as to whether or not he would actually play this week. Other thoughts that he mentioned about injuries, some nicks and bruises, et cetera, as it relates to the Longhorns.
Yeah, DeAndre Moore was the only other player mentioned. He said he had a hip pointer. DeAndre Moore was out practicing today this morning as well. So that's really interesting in the sense that, you didn't hear about a Trey Wisner. You didn't hear about Jelani McDonald, two guys that were held out but suited up. Good signs for what's to come for them long term. But also back to Quinn. I might be on an island here with this take, but I think if he's able to go against Mississippi State, you throw him out there. You don't want to find rust. And that's not necessarily been a part of Quinn's game, but I think you want to see him find ways to get into more rhythm with those wide receivers. Of course, if you think about it, he's only really had to play more than 3 quarters in just one game so far this year. And going into Oklahoma, a team that, again, has a lot of talented playmakers on that defensive side of the ball, you want him to be as up to speed with those guys as possible. If he's healthy, I'm throwing him out there personally. But we'll see as Texas continues to evaluate him into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week.
Fingers crossed for Quinn Ewers. Hope more than anything, whether he plays this weekend or not, the hope is that he's healing. That's as important as anything. You don't want to put the cart before the horse. He needs to get healthy so he can be back playing for the Longhorns whenever he's called upon. Hopefully it's this weekend, but we understand if it has to wait until OU or even later, because these oblique injuries can be interesting. We are happy, however, to report based on Steve Sarkisian that he's at least back out at practice right now. CJ, you were talking about last week how he was just throwing on the side, not doing much at all. So we'll know more. Most likely on Wednesday. Sark did say Ewers would be listed as questionable as of today. That doesn't mean that when the injury report comes out on Wednesday, exactly what he might say as it relates to Quinn Ewers. All right, that's going to do it for this breaking news episode from Steve Sarkisian. Quinn Ewers back out at practice. Longhorns now 4-0, headed up against the Mississippi State this weekend in DKR, right behind CJ Vogel right now. You see DKR with that big Longhorn logo. For CJ, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchison, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em, everybody. Make sure you're back at 3 o'clock for the winning drive with Rod Babers, Coach Bob Shipley, and CJ himself. Until next time, hook 'em.